Hello and welcome to this coding lecture. You can see here I've opened already VS Code, or Cursor specifically in my case. It shouldn't make a difference in the way we are using it because I'm going to deactivate all AI assistants so that we are coding every line together. So I have navigated to the subfolder for LLM, and now we're going to implement some code so that we are able to connect with some external large language model, and we are able then to get back the answers. Good. So I've opened this file 28a start model chat Groq. We are always going to have a starter script and some end script. So the starter script is coming with some code so that we don't have to type everything together. At the beginning, it's more or less empty because there's nothing to build up on. But in later lectures, there is going to be some package imports so that we don't have to repeat similar stuff every time again. I don't want to extend the course without any further advantage for you. So we are growing with time. At the beginning, there is more code that we are developing together. Later on, we can build upon what we have learned before. Good. First things first, we need certain packages. So we need to have, for example, some interaction with our operating system. So we need OS, and we need to be able to fetch the environment variables. And for this, we have installed the package python.env. And from here, we can load the functionality load.env and find.env. And then we can call load.env and pass in here the function find.env. And also we can say that we want to use the current working directory. So this is what we are going to use here. And what this is doing, I've shown this in the theory lectures. This is going to look for a file called .env, this one. And it's then importing all the different keys and values that are here and exposing them to the Python code as environment variables. Good. So we are going to run this. I'm always going to use this interactive window because it's for development a very handy tool. And we are now seeing here at the right hand side this interactive window. We get the output true. So it means that the code has found successfully some environment variable. We can also check that. We can check that the environment variable is there, and it's called Groq API key. If it's finding a key with exactly this name, then it should show a string similar to this one at your end. Good. Now we need to select a model from Groq, and for that we can navigate over to the model overview from the provider. And here on the page from Groq we can find all the different models that are available as of the time of the recording. So we can see here it's separated into production models and preview models. So for now we are going to use this Llama 3.3 70 billion parameter model. We can click to copy it into the clipboard, and then we can move back to our coding window. Good. So we need to specify our model name. Here I just paste in the model name that we just selected on the page, and now we can create an instance of the model. This means that we are using a class that is provided by the developers of this model provider. And for that, we need to import at first, of course, the corresponding functionality. So that part is missing. And we need to import from LangChain Groq the functionality chat-Groq. Let's run it again. Good. So now chat-Groq is available, and here we can specify many different parameters. For example, the model name. And here we pass in the variable that we just defined. With Control B, I can show and hide the left sidebar with all the information. So I just hide it so that we can focus on the code. Then the next parameter is the temperature that we can specify here. We have not covered the temperature parameter yet. It's going to come in one of the following lectures. But for now, just keep in mind that this is one of the most important parameters for tuning the behavior of the model. And then we need to pass the API key. And then we can pass it in the way that we have just tested it before. So it's called Groq _API _key. And with that, we can then get an instance of the model. Actually, if you check the details of the function, you find out that if the name of the environment variable is exactly called like this, Groq _API _key, then you don't even have to pass it, because this model class is trying to find an environment variable with this name. And if you don't deviate from this name, then you can just disregard it. So then you don't need to pass the parameter API key. It's doing it automatically. So in the subsequent lectures, when I'm not passing explicitly some API key, then just be aware that the underlying model class is following some default expectation. And if I set everything up in exactly this way, then often we don't have to pass the API key. Good, now we can run it. I just call Control Enter to run the cell, and we can see the green check mark. The model instance has been created, and that's amazing. So that means that it found the API key and it was able to find the model, and now we can test it out. So now we can go to the next chunk and we can specify that we want to invoke the model. So already at this point, just memorize that we are going to use the invoke method a lot. This is the typical method for running a model or running a chain. So here we can pass directly a string, which is our user query, what is generative AI. And if we run it, we interact with the model and we can see what we get back. We get back a message from the type AI message, and that one is having some content and some further information, so that we are not just seeing it on the console, but instead we want to store it into some variable. So we assign it to a variable res for response, and I save it in here. Good, that worked. And now we can take a deeper look into it. So there are different ways to do that. One is to take a look at the model dump. That's a method of this object, and then we can see what is part of this object. So the most important part here is the content key, because in the content key we can see the direct answer. So this is when you use a chatbot, what you get as an answer. So we can check that out at some later point. But for now, let's just talk about what else is visible here. We have here a lot of additional information on metadata, like how many tokens were used, how many tokens were put into the model, how many tokens were returned from the model, and how many were used in total. So all of this is shown in here. And then if we would use any tools, we could find that out with the model dump. And we will come back to the model dump in some later lectures. For now, it's important that we know that here we have now the content that we can fetch. And this is the answer that we get from the model output. Good. And that's it for this very short introduction video into how we can interact with a model. So here, just a quick reminder, we have imported the corresponding package and the corresponding class that we use. Then we have to set up a model instance of the corresponding class. We have to select a model from the overview from the provider, because all the providers are having tons of different models, and we just have to check which ones are suiting our needs best. Then we can specify further parameters, more on that later. And then eventually we can run the invoke method to actually interact with the model. Finally, we get a response from the model, and we can check all details of it, for example, with the method model dump. But typically we are interested in the content. Good, that's it for our first introduction into model interaction. Thanks a lot and see you in the next one.